Hello and welcome to Newscentre. With me, Parikshit Luthra. There were several unprecedented situations, mainly the COVID pandemic, that have reversed the global human development by 5 years. This is what a United Nations report has said. For the first time, human development has declined globally for 2 years in a row. 9 out of every 10 countries registered a decline in their Human Development Index score in either 2020 or 2021. To make things worse, the report's outlook for 2022 is grim due to the impact of the Russia and Ukraine war on energy and security. India's decline in human development mirrors the global trend. The country's HDI value has also declined for 2 straight years. India ranks 132 out of 191 nations. India's score has dropped 1 point since last year. India continues to be in the medium human development category. The UN report attributes this drop to a slump in life expectancy from 69 to 67 years. However, there may be a silver lining. The impact of gender inequality on human development in India is lower compared to other nations. The report also says that India is bridging the human development gap between men and women faster than the rest of the world. Let me go across to our special guest this evening. We're joined by UNDP's India representative, Shoko Noda. Shoko, thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. Give us a sense of how the pandemic impacted the Human Development Index with reference to India.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the questions. So the pandemic is definitely one of the severe crises that the humans are now facing. Other crises such as climate change and war, and these crises are all global. It's not localized, so it is impacting human development across the world. India is not the only country which is facing this decline. 90% of the countries, as you rightly said, around the world are facing this decline due to this multiple array of crises. And 5 years of setback. That means that we started this SDG, 15 years of SDG years, but then we are back to the starting point. 2/3 of countries have faced a drop in life expectancy. 95% have suffered the income decline. And as I said, India is not an exception. India's value for 3 out of 4 human development indicators have fallen: life expectancy, expected years of schooling, and gross national income per capita. School closure definitely during the lockdown is definitely affecting this education the indicators decline. Also brutal, I would say brutal impact of waves of lives and livelihoods and pressure on already strained health system. These are all the challenges that we are facing. As you said, this year India ranks 132 out of 191. And but I would also like to say that it is important to look at the human development values more than ranking.
All right. Shoko, I'd also like to ask you, the report says that stress, sadness, anger, worry have been increasing over the last decade, now reaching record levels. What, according to you, were the key drivers, and how was the population in India impacted, according to your report?
So crises are intersecting and also overlapping. As I said, definitely COVID was one of the crises, but when we look at the climate change, when we look at the war in Ukraine, they are all global, not localized. So therefore, each crisis has global impact as well as the impact on individuals. So the pace of crisis is much faster than before, as we can all feel. And we are, as individuals, as well as countries, as well as communities, have not faced this fast-paced crisis, therefore are not fully prepared to face the crisis, let alone the managing the crisis. Therefore, the impact on people's stress, people's worries have increased.
Okay, just to also speak about your recommendations for the future. In the report, UNDP has said there cannot be business as usual and there needs to be a focus on 3 I's with reference to India: investment, insurance and innovation. Could you elaborate on how these three need to be focused on by the Indian policymakers?
Yes. So as I said, 3 I's are suggested in the report: investment, insurance, and innovation. Investment, yes, it is happening already, but more needed to be spent, for example, in renewable, because climate change crisis is imminent. So more renewable energy is needed. Also, more investment on disaster management. I know, again, the government is already working on it and it has good capacity, but we still need to have more, the robust capacity. And then, of course, investment in health sector, because this pandemic is not going to be the first, but we may have more pandemics. So a preparation for future pandemics is also extremely important. And here also, when we say investment, it is not only from the government. Private sector and the public sector have to work hand in hand to see where the financial gaps are. So the investment is extremely important. Second I is insurance. And when we talk about insurance, we just may think of just that, health insurance or something that we have. It goes much beyond that. This concept of insurance is much beyond that. It is about, so basically, social protection to absorb shocks at individual levels, and then also to support the most vulnerable groups, such as women, but also other vulnerable groups. And India has a number of those policy schemes, social protection schemes, and I think that worked very well during the pandemic, and that needs to be expanded and also strengthened. Innovation is the third.
All right, Shoko.
Yes.
Yeah, Shoko. Shoko, you've also spoken about in the report how Sri Lanka, China, Bangladesh, Bhutan have scored above India in the Human Development Index. On what parameters did they score above India?
As I said, that the scoring is not always or ranking is not always the best way to compare countries. I think we do need to look at the Human Development Index itself. Each country, you mentioned some countries, but each country has its own challenges as well as strengths. So when we look at the ranking, and then when you said other countries are doing better, that is because of the different country context. But I think it's very important to see that the trend of human development values, especially in India.
Okay, when it comes to gender inequalities, what more can India do to bridge gender inequalities at the workplace and in different sectors?
Yes, the good news, as you mentioned, is that India is narrowing the gap between male and female human development index achievement, and this is faster than the world. So this is excellent, though the gap remains quite large and larger than the global average. The worsening of gender inequality in India is much smaller than it is in the world. It reflects government commitment on putting the gender agenda up front and the center and across policy and programs. So this is an excellent policies and programs. However, I think we still do need to have expansion of skill programs for women to support their participation in the workforce. Because when you look at the participation of a women's participation workforce, it is one of the lowest in the world. So we really need to have even much more robust package for women to join the workforce and be economically empowered. And then second,
Right.
India, yes.
My final question. Yeah, my final question, what according to you are the areas that India needs to work on for the future? The challenges to India because of the geopolitical situation, inflation and other economic headwinds?
I think India should focus on, as I said, inequality that includes gender, but to support other vulnerable groups, because it is very important to have, how to say, the very healthy population. So, for example, the health investment in health is extremely important. And India, for example, has already brought a very innovative way to support the population to get vaccination. India is spearheading that digital space. And for example, the COWIN is like the globally flagship program that UNDP was very pleased to be part of the partner with. But that inequality and then investment in health is important, so that once we have very healthy population, they can also have much better education, can focus on education. The kids can focus on education. And also when they become adults, they can have much, how to say, they can earn more. Therefore, the human development index, human development in India will improve when we focus on health. And then also the inequality.
All right. Okay, Shoko Noda, thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18 Newscentre, giving us a sense of how India fared on the Human Development Index and areas that India needs to work on for the future as well. We're heading into a short break, but coming up, an exclusive interaction with Power Minister R.K. Singh on India's green energy push and much more. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. The European Union is staring at an unpredictable winter as it braces to impose a price cap on Russian gas in a bid to cut Vladimir Putin's revenue source. As the war in Ukraine nears the 200th day, Putin has threatened to halt all energy shipments to Europe if the price cap were to be imposed. His comments could mean that European nations have to introduce energy rationing in the winter months. The EU has already asked member nations to voluntarily reduce their gas consumption by 15%. Russian state-owned company Gazprom has already shut down gas flows through its key Nord Stream 1 pipeline to Germany. CNBC's Sylvia Amaro gets us the latest on the European Union's stance.
President of the European Commission, which is the executive arm of the EU, Ursula von der Leyen, she said that they want to go ahead with a cap on Russian gas prices. Immediately after that, the president of Russia has said that if that ends up being the case, then Russia could cut all supplies of energy to the bloc. But the European Union does seem to stand firm, and the idea of going ahead with these gas price caps is indeed on the table. Let's take a look at what else von der Leyen had to say yesterday.
We aim at lowering the costs of gas, and therefore we will propose a price cap on Russian gas. Of course, the objective is here very clear. We all know that our sanctions are deeply grinding into the Russian economy with a heavy negative impact. But Putin is partially buffering through fossil fuel revenues. So here the objective is we must cut Russia's revenues, which Putin uses to finance his atrocious war in Ukraine.
Von der Leyen also made it very clear that they want to go ahead with immediate measures to support the vulnerable households and the businesses. And then ultimately, also important to keep in mind that they want to impose mandatory targets on electricity consumption. So these are a couple of ideas that are just getting more ground ahead of a meeting that's taking place tomorrow. But we have yet to see where the European Union is going to land on these proposals.
All right, Sylvia Amaro, thank you for joining us. Moving on, India is already ahead of Europe when it comes to electrification. That's a word coming from Tobias Winter, director of the Indo-German Energy Forum. In a conversation with CNBC-TV18's Abhimanyu Sharma, Winter maintained that the only long-term solution to Europe's energy crisis is investing more in renewable sources.
We have huge gas storage systems. No? So right now, Germany, all Europe, they're actually storing whatever gas comes in. And in the meanwhile, CNG terminals are being built up for liquid gas imports. And yeah, there's a big controversial ongoing on to which extent now Germany and Europe is actually investing in fossil fuel infrastructure, though we actually want to switch to green electricity and green hydrogen. But that's why government of Germany is making it mandatory that whatever CNG terminals are being built right now, they have to be 100% green hydrogen ready. So one question is on the winter, and another question is long-term, how Europe, how Germany will be able to diversify, and the answer is it's renewable energies. It's renewable energies from all over Europe, maybe even from Africa, through big cables, HVDC lines, and yeah, mid-long term green hydrogen. That's the topic right now.
Also speaking about India and China, where they are big importers of oil and natural gas, and Russia also figures amongst the nations from which they import oil. Now, as buyers or as importers, will they have any degree of leverage as far as negotiation of the prices are concerned? Because oil prices, of course, are a tricky domain for both these nations. For India particularly, if we speak about the price of petroleum in the international market often affects local prices. It leads to price rise issues and inflation in India. How do you look at the scenario?
You know, I have a bigger vision for India than on short-term price gains for petroleum. Your country is beautiful. You are already the third largest producer and consumer of grey hydrogen. Why not becoming the largest producer and consumer of green hydrogen, and maybe also exporter? All the oil discussions, these are discussions for, let's say, now and tomorrow, and maybe for the next 4, 5, 6 years, maybe also longer. But in the long run, you are going to be completely electrified, as Honorable Minister Singh also said. You're already pretty much advanced in, for example, in compared to Europe, that in India, heating, cooling is already done through electricity. You imagine you were asking for the winter, why gas is such an issue for Europe, because all our boilers, all our heaters, they don't run on electricity, they run on gas. How does your boiler run? It runs on electricity. How does your AC run? It runs on electricity. So you're already a step forward compared to Europe, because now the next step is to make this electricity green. So actually, heating, cooling, you can make it green very, very quick compared to Europe. So why do you want to import oil? You switch to e-mobility, you produce the green electricity in this country, you can create millions and millions of jobs in this country by just relying on your own sun and wind resources. So don't waste too much time to talk about oil.
The government is upbeat about the transition to green energy despite the challenges. Speaking to my colleague Abhimanyu Sharma on the sidelines of EU-India Green Hydrogen Forum, Power Minister R.K. Singh shared the India strategy on the green energy drive.
We discussed the question of energy transition and the pathways to energy transition, and we identified that what are the aspects we need to work on, because energy transition is throwing up new challenges as we traverse this path which has not been traversed earlier. So storage we identified as something which we need to work on, electrolyzers we need to work on together, and of course green hydrogen we need to work on together. And by and large, energy access is again something which the G20 ministers prioritized, because there are about 800 million people in the world who don't have access to energy. That's a priority. Access to affordable energy is a priority. Security of supply chains is a priority. So these are the things which we discussed.
So you had spoken yesterday on ocean surface beds and the bidding for offshore. So just a line on that. I mean, what's
so so basically we worked out the parameters for bids for offshore, what we shall charge, insofar as lease rent for ocean floor, etc. are concerned. So we're keeping the charges very low. It's just about $1,200 per square kilometer per year or something like that. So that's the potential. So we are making it as easy as possible. We'll also provide transmission, free transmission for offshore wind, and we shall collect the electricity from offshore pooling stations. We'll collect it from there and transfer.
Thank you.
Let's switch focus to cybersecurity. Education institutions, finance companies and government are among the sectors most prone to cyber threats. That's the word coming in from Sundar Balasubramanian, Managing Director for India and SAARC at Checkpoint Software. Speaking exclusively to my colleague Ashmit Kumar, he said that Indian companies get hacked twice as much as the global average. Listen in.
On an average, the Indian enterprises get hacked twice as much as the global average. In fact, the number of attack vectors on the Indian enterprise is significantly higher. In our experience from Checkpoint research, we find three verticals extremely vulnerable. The first one being education, and then government and the BFSI verticals also being under attack right now. So the pandemic has significantly changed the way the attack vectors are happening right now, attacks happening right now. And I'm not saying the other verticals are not invulnerable, but I mean, these are the three verticals that we in our experience see suffering the most.
Can you put a number to the potential losses caused due to such cyber threats? Is there an assessment that has been done in terms of what the potential annual damage could be like, courtesy these cyber threats?
So we don't put a monetary value to these attacks because these are threats coming in, but not necessarily successful, right? We measure the number of threats coming in, but not all threats are gone through creating a monetary damage. But to answer your question in a different way, we are seeing the threat vectors coming in more from the email that is in use, right? So if I had to give you some statistics, 2020 prior to the pandemic, the threat vectors through the email was about 36%, and the rest of it used to come from the web, about 64%. And as of last half, which is January to June, we had 89% of the threat vectors coming in through email and only 11% coming through the web.
India very recently has completed what the government has called a very successful round of a spectrum auction, 1.5 lakh crore rupees. That's the sum realized. The telcos are quite bullish in terms of their rollout plans. But this, of course, presents a new landscape of digital threats in terms of machine-to-machine communication, IoT. What is your understanding of the nature of these evolving digital threats in a post-5G environment?
Yes, I mean, 5G is a very welcome change to the country from a technology and accessibility standpoint. But along with it, it also brings in the threat which is easy to use, is easy to connect with. It provides various forms of data and information down to the last mile. But along with it, it's also very important for us to secure the devices which are going to leverage the 5G, right? So my concern would obviously be, number one, mobiles. Okay, I always believe that mobiles are going to be a significant threat vector if not managed properly. The second set of devices which are going to come onto the 5G network, which could be your smart devices, your cameras, your printers, any device which is intelligent getting onto the network is a potential security risk right now. So I think the country is prepared. I think we are prepared to really make sure that we are bringing up the defenses. But yes, as you rightly said, 5G is something to watch out for and be extremely careful about from a security standpoint.
As India goes digital, how would you look at the level of awareness and preparedness for such threats?
I think the level of awareness and preparedness from a policy, strategy, IT strategy, digitization, the fluid perimeter, I think is good. I think India is fortunate to stay ahead of the curve on that one. I think the challenge that we might land up having in the years to come is more about the skills which are available. Today, India does have a severe skills shortage of cybersecurity professionals, right? So we probably have 50 to 60% of all that we need. How
are you looking at the Indian market and the role that you see India playing as far as Checkpoint is concerned?
The Indian market is very, I would say it's growing at a good pace. I would estimate the market for cybersecurity in India to be anywhere upwards of $2 billion as we speak. Which indicates I would say the posture of the country as a whole So there is a huge amount of cybersecurity awareness. The market is growing pretty actively. We are also seeing that growth happen with Checkpoint in the country. We work 100% with our partners. We are 100% channel-driven company. We believe we have the right products in the business, and our partners are the ones who actually take it to the market and make it work. So overall, I think the market is growing at a very, very good buoyancy right now, right? And I think this buoyancy is here to stay, because I think this also, in a way, is reflective of the way each of us treat security in the country. We take it with the utmost seriousness and respect, and I think that leads to the buoyancy that we see in the market right now.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Centre. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.